Hi, my name is Tanner Shekels. I'm a business consultant, and today we're going to talk a little bit about employee retention, okay? And when we're talking about employee retention, there are two questions that we want to be asking ourselves first, okay? And employee retention really just means how long are people working for us, okay? And these first two questions are one, how long are employees working here, okay? Working here for, all right? And the second question that we want to ask ourselves is how successful are they? All right? How successful are they? So, if I am a company that is generally looking to improve its employee retention, or I'm a company that is struggling with retaining its employees, then this is a great framework questionnaire to kind of start ourselves off with, okay? Now, two things that we need to be mindful about when we're discussing employee retention is that the first thing is employee retention is a shared responsibility between all employees, okay? And that is backed by having policies and strong leaders with inside of an organization, okay? The second thing that we need to be mindful about is the majority of the time, the reason why people leave their jobs is not so much because of the work, but because of everything that evolves around the work itself, okay? And employee retention can be affected by a wide range of areas. And today we're going to get into some of those areas, all right? And the first area that we're going to dive into is the area with our manager, right? Or our supervisor, okay? Or whomever. Because as a manager, it is our responsibility to ensure that every single employee is set up for success, okay? And that is why we have that second question here, okay? How successful are they? How successful are our employees, all right? And something that a lot of places are struggling with or falling victim to today is what we call the Caesar managing style, okay? And the Caesar managing style is an old school way of managing, and it is the most common way that places and people manage still today. All right. And to give a description of what our Caesars may look like or some cues about them, they are the ones that may have steered away a little bit from our guidelines or procedures or SOP or operations manual, or maybe they have steered away from it altogether and have gone down a route of saying, hey, we're no longer doing the right thing anymore. We're going to be doing things the way that I say, all right? That's kind of the mentality that a Caesar may have, right? The second thing to point out on a Caesar is someone who doesn't like new ideas, okay? Someone who doesn't like creativity or innovation, right? Unless the idea is coming from themselves, all right? They don't like to see others grow or be promoted inside of a company, right? They like to keep people beneath them. They don't like change, okay? They're the kind of the ones saying, hey, the way things are the way things are staying and they're not changing, okay? That's a sign of a Caesar. Another one would be they feel like they need to raise their voice at you to get you to do something, okay? They have to yell at you. This is a big one. They are also the ones that decide how fast you learn something, okay? Those are all signs of a Caesar, all right? And shifting to the employee perspective here for a moment, it may kind of feel like the majority of our interactions with this person, it may feel like it's all based off of what I'm not doing or something I'm doing wrong. And heck, I may not even be doing anything wrong yet. This manager is coming to me and all of our interactions are like based off of me doing something wrong, okay? And maybe we're not having any greetings with this manager, or maybe they kind of feel negative, not as positive that we would typically expect coming from our leaders inside of an organization. Okay, these are all signs of Caesars. All right, and to pull back, discussing our Caesars here for a second, there is one thing that every single employee is after. Okay. And there's one thing that every department inside of an organization is after, all right? And that is growth, all right? every employee is after growth. And anytime we put a wall in front of growth, we are hindering our progress, okay? And we want to be the ones who eliminate any walls that get put in front of growth, right? So we don't even want to be the ones that feel like we have to go to war to get to growth, okay? We don't even want to feel like we have to go knocking down a bunch of walls to get to growth, right? Whether if we are the employee, the head of a department, or if we're talking about the department itself inside of an organization. We just want to get there, right? We just want to get to success, okay? And if there's one thing as a higher up, if there's one understanding that we need to have with our managers, it is the understanding that as a manager, one of your responsibilities is to create more managers, right? Because more managers means what? More growth, okay? We want people inside of the organization doing more, producing more, because this means further expansion, okay? And when we have this understanding with our managers or supervisors, their mentality shifts from, okay, it's no longer about me, all right? It's no longer about what's best for me. It's no longer about, me being the boss or the manager and getting and being able to run the show. The dynamic starts to shift to what is best for the company, okay? And that is the mindset that we want every employee to have inside of our organization, right? Because every employee is after growth and the company itself is after growth, right? And that may look like, increasing our yearly revenue or furthering our work out into the world, right? Getting our message more out there, okay? Whatever it is, we are all after the same thing, and that is growth, okay? So when we have this understanding with our managers that they need to be creating more managers, that is the mentality of, okay, we need to be moving people up, right? Uplifting people, okay? And if there is one thing inside of a company there is one thing inside of a company that is the most important thing, okay? And that is systems, okay? A company cannot function without having successful systems, all right? And to give an example of a successful system, let's say you're a CEO or an owner or, whomever, higher up, and let's say like one day, like you go home and then the next day when you come into work, like so much has changed in a positive route, right? Like so many things have gone right, okay? That's a sign of a successful system. Or maybe, I'm at our location on the East Coast and I went to the West Coast location for a week. And when I come back to the East Coast location, like so much has changed, right? In a positive direction. Everything just kind of flowed, right? That's a sign of a successful system, okay? And that's what we want, right? That's what we want inside of our organization, right? We all depend on systems inside of a company. So we need to make sure that we have systems for our employees, okay? And one system that we are going to share today is what we call an unbiased ladder system. Unbiased ladder system, okay? Now, the unbiased ladder system is designed to prevent situations such as, let's say there is an outstanding employee, right? They're just really phenomenal. They do everything by the book. The performance level is just great. Everything that, we could ask for, okay? And they're trying to move up in the company, all right? But as a supervisor or manager, because we don't like this person, we don't want to promote them, okay? And I'm sure we've all experienced this somewhere, okay? This system prevents that from happening, all right? So let's say, for an example, this is the entry-level position of your organization. And up here is a manager position, or the position that the employee is going after, okay? And every single step along the ladder is either a task, or it is a skill or certification that the employee needs to have in order to get that role, okay? This allows the motivated individual to move up inside of a company without falling into the hands of a Caesar, right? They get to avoid being on the land of a Caesar, okay? And even if there is a Caesar present inside of a company, the system is backing up the employee, okay? And that's what we want, right? Because we're not always going to be aware of everything, okay? So that's why it's really important to have systems, okay? Now, what the system also allows is, let's say we have people who don't want to move up, right? Some people want to stay here at the entry level position, and there's nothing wrong with that. Some people, let's just say each step along the ladder is a bump in pay. Some people may just want to move, up 3 steps and stay there, and that's okay. We need people to fill those positions too, right? So this allows individuals to move up in the company without being hindered by a Caesar, okay? And the biggest thing what this allows is we don't timestamp our employees, okay? Right? Because anytime we timestamp things, what are we doing? We are putting walls in front of growth, okay? So we need to stay clear from saying, hey, you need to stay in this position for 2 years before we can move you up, okay? Or, we need to stay clear of saying, hey, it's going to take you 1 year to learn this. And then we can potentially talk about, moving you up somewhere else, okay? We need to avoid saying things like that, right? Because we are hindering our growth when we say that, right? We can be doing things a lot more effectively, okay? As long as we have what? Successful systems, okay? Another thing is that a lot of us are looking for A players, okay? High performers, right? And when we say, right, because we know what these people are going to do, okay? And really what we're saying when we're looking for those A players is we're looking for people with strong personalities, okay? And strong personalities may look like someone who is confident, assertive, who shows leadership, who stands on their values. And these are the people that are going to stand on the company's values, right? These are the people that we want, who are going to defend the company's values, okay? And that's what we want. They also perform well under stress, pressure, okay? They also, when they don't need constant external validation when learning from mistakes, okay? They can pick themselves up and keep moving forward, all right? These are all qualities that we're really looking for in individuals when we're saying we're looking for those top players, those A players, right? And as a company, we need to make sure that our doors are wide enough to have A players, okay? Because if our doors, right, we're not always going to find A players during the interview process or onboarding process. It might be a month, 2 months after they've been hired on. Because in reality, these A players are scoping you out, okay? They're trying to see what you have to offer, okay? It's not the other way around, all right? The A players are looking to see what the company has to offer. Because I'll tell you right now, if you do not have the right offer, they're going to quit and go to the next place that does, okay? So we need to make sure that our doors are wide open to have A players. And, if you do not, to you, they're going to quit, right? They're going to quit eventually, okay? If you told them it's going to take them 5 years to do something, they're going to be quitting, going to the next place where they're going to, move up, okay? They're out there, all right? The A players, if the doors are closed, they are going to shut down mentally and quit, and to you it's going to look like they just didn't want to work. Okay, so we need to make sure once again that our doors are open wide enough to have A players, and when we find these people, we need to snatch them up and put them to use, right? And that's why we have something, right, the unbiased ladder system. Okay, we need to have the throttle on this, okay? Because I mean, depending on what perspective we're looking at things here, right? We have systems of the organization itself, and if we're looking at people being a part of the system, we need all of this being raised up. We need to raise the vibration in this place, okay? So success, growth, right? That's the path that we're on. We want all the open paths of success that we possibly can, okay? And we need to make sure that is open for every single employee and for all of our systems inside of the organization, okay? So this system helps reinforce employees, and it also helps reinforce, success. I mean, inside the company and for the company itself, right? Because people are doing more, producing more, okay? And not only that, employees are happier, right? Because this system allows individuals to kind of show us what you got, right? Show us what you're made of, okay? This allows people to bring their skills and their A game into the company, right? They're not being put down by our Caesars, right? So that's what we want, okay? I will share an example of a company that was dealing with a Caesar that was struggling with retaining its employees. For some reason, this company, they just couldn't figure out why so many people were leaving at the 2-month mark. And granted, yes, they had a lot of reasons as to why people were leaving, but the main reason was because of the production manager, who was a Caesar manager, okay? That was his style of managing. This production manager, the only thing he was concerned about was how many units they were getting out the door, okay? That's all he cared about. He wanted to be able to go to his higher up and say, hey, look how many units we got out the door today. Look how much more revenue we're generating. Okay, he was only, he wanted to make himself look good to his higher up, okay? And, that starts to kind of create a Caesar feeling a little bit, and you'll see here in just a moment what he was doing, though, with him only having to focus on this, he was not paying attention to the mental and physical stress that he was putting on the employees, okay? And I'm sure you can see where I'm going with this. The majority of the employees were leaving around the 2-month mark because they were just being burnt out, okay? They were just under so much pressure every day to get units out the door, and this production manager just didn't care, okay? And he just didn't care how they were treated or how they felt, okay? And that starts to talk a little bit about culture, right? And to talk a little bit about culture, what does the work atmosphere feel like? When we're going into culture, there's always 2 questions that you want to kind of be in alignment with at all times. Your answers need to be in alignment with at all times. The 2 questions are, the first, what does, how do we want people to be treated, and how do we want people to feel working here, okay? Whenever you stay along the lines of those 2 questions, you'll always be, within a healthy range of culture, right? As long as you're going in a positive direction with those answers, right? But as you can see, this production manager just didn't care about that, okay? And the result of that, what happened? People were quitting. People were getting burnt out, okay? And when we do this, right, we are not thinking about the full results of things, or the full results or whatever that happened because of this, okay? Because when we have, all these people quitting, what happens is we have to then, get back to posting ads, right? We have to go tell HR or our job recruiters, hey, we need more people working here, okay? So we're spending more money on advertising. We're honestly, we're wasting, all of our precious time doing this whole cycle again, because, and I mean, we're just wasting money on hiring costs. Like, it's just, I mean, all the time we spent training these people and they're just leaving, right? It's a big waste of time. It's unproductive, right? And those are the issues that we want to avoid, okay? And, that's a sign of a Caesar, and that's what a Caesar can do to your company, okay? It can be right under your nose, all right? And to share an example of a company that was struggling with retaining its employees due to a culture issue, this place, it offered such like a wide range of shifts. It was so cool. It was like, day and night shift. You could get all your hours in like over the course of 3 days or 5 days. It just allowed anybody to come in and get a job, and it was decent pay too, right? And another thing is that what made this place so cool is that it had so many people from across the globe working here. Okay, the amount of languages that were spoken at this place was just so cool to see. All right, but after a while of working there, the employees were quitting because it made you kind of feel like you didn't belong there, okay? So in essence, this company had no culture, right? It just kind of made you feel like you didn't belong there, all right? So that's right. Culture is about what? What are the two questions? How do we want people to feel when they're working there, and how do we want people to be treated? Okay, and in this case, people felt nothing, right? They just didn't feel, like they belonged working there. Okay, and the result of that, this company was having employees, in and out like revolving doors. Okay, so it's really important to have a positive work culture. We'll get into more of that in the future. Okay. Another thing that I want to point out is your job orientations, right? Our job orientations, whether if we are talking about, if we're about safety or customer service, or we're optimistic thinkers over here, we're big on creativity, new ideas. We're saying, hey, we have strong, leaders inside of our organization that you can always go to for help and all these things, okay? And as an employee, if I go out and start performing the work and what you were selling me in the orientation doesn't match what I'm experiencing, then as a company, we are losing credibility, okay? The employee is losing trust with the company, okay? And we never want our employees to feel that way, okay? Because chances are, if our employees are losing trust with the company, we can probably go ahead and just say that we're losing trust with our customers, okay? So we always want to make sure that what we are selling, what we are delivering inside of our job orientations is happening, out on the floor or out in the field or whatever, whenever the employee starts work, okay? It's very important. So circling back to our Caesars here, as a higher up, if we have a Caesar or we're getting reports about a Caesar, right, about their behaviors, our first response is to never go and terminate them, okay? Our first response needs to be, our thinking needs to be, can this person change, okay? Do they have the ability to change? And we need to make sure that we are providing everything in a work context, that they have everything to change, okay? And we also need to make sure that we are doing our part of, like I said, giving them everything that they need, okay? It's very important that we make sure we are doing that. Because people are Caesars for a variety of reasons, okay? And a lot of times, if you go back and just kind of think deeply about, I don't want to dip so much into the psychology side of things right now, But if you go back and listen to all the things that I was listening about what a Caesar looks like, a lot of these things are coming from insecurities. Okay, right? We don't want to see others get over us, right? If another employee is, having some really great ideas, but because they didn't come from me, I'm just shutting it down. All of these things, majority of the time, are coming from insecurities. Okay, so if I'm a Caesar, if I know I'm a Caesar and I don't want to be a Caesar and I want to change, the first thing that we need to be making sure is, um, are we completing and fulfilling all of our job duties? Okay, that is the first step that we need to take. Okay, and if we are someone who, um, if we're just someone in general who has insecurities, then let's let work be where we build our confidence. Okay, let's let work be where we build ourselves. Okay, and if we are an employee who is currently dealing with a Caesar, what I'm going to tell you is that cover your ground and stand on your ground, okay? And always make sure you're doing what you're supposed to do. And secondly, always make sure you're doing the right thing, okay? And if you are, if that place is crippled and they decide to fire you because you are doing the right thing and they're sending you out the door, then you walk out of there with your head held high, okay? Because this is what is gonna make you be a better person and employee at the next place you go to, okay? So we talked a little bit about the basics here of employee retention. I think we're gonna stop right here.